I do this at the end of every month to just have an open discussion with everybody on everything I've said, everything that's going on, lingering questions. Eventually, you guys can give me a tip, and I'll try to get to all of the tipped answers. Otherwise, I just pick the ones I want to answer, or frankly, just the ones I notice. And save those tip questions for the end. Especially with how much people are spamming the chat. I might have to turn down how quick the chat is. I got to be honest here. F is for over. Okay, let's see. All right, so yeah, it's been a huge month, and I want to get right into addressing some things. I'm never quite sure when I'm going to do a live stream at the end of the month. You know, it's sometimes a week before the end of the month, sometimes it's a week or two, depending on how busy I am after. But there's just been so much news that I think it's time to just actively address things, to talk about a lot of the stuff I'm seeing people say out there. So first, I'm going to go through things from this month. And then I'm going to go through the Patreon submitted questions. Remember, if you're a patron, you can submit questions for free. And then after that, I will get to the live Q&A. But I've done enough yammering, blah, 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 right? And so let's get into it. All right, so writing down the timestamp. Anyways, the first thing I want to talk about is just Ampere. And I don't actually have a lot to say, guys. All of my Ampere info seems to line up with the other leaks. So I'm really confident in those sources by now. I mean, honestly, what else is there to say? We know Ampere is going to be very powerful. It's going to come with a lot of new features, and Nvidia's going all out because they're clearly worried about AMD. I really don't feel like I have much else to say. I've covered 4 big Ampere videos where I go into different samples. I'm having info fed to me from a couple sources, and so that's all there is to say, right? It seems to all be pretty much correct. So let's get over the Ampere. That's all I got to say about Ampere right now. We can get to direct questions in a second. But I do have quite a lot of stuff to say about Navi 2X. Guys, save the tipped questions for later. I may not get to it if you send them too early. Navi 2X. Yeah, there we go. Anyways, though, let me get directly into, I'm actually going to move the timestamp here. Let me get directly into what I think about Navi. So what I really want to open with saying is this. I put links in the description, and you guys got to click on them. Lisa Su literally said they're trying to double performance. And so this is something where it's almost becoming comical to me, where people are like, why do you think Navi may be why do you think RDNA 2, the top RDNA 2, may double 5700 XT performance? Because Lisa Su said it will? You know, let's read the tea leaves on what the number 2 means. The number 2, as far as I've learned in college, means double the number 1. So that's my big source, first of all. Is Lisa Su literally saying in an interview that they're going to increase efficiency by 50% and launch higher energy usage cars? So it's abundantly clear AMD, at least at the first, wanted to double 5700 XT performance. And to the people, you know, that say, what's your estimate? I've never changed my estimate. All I'm saying is AMD clearly wants to double 5700 XT performance. It's not my job to make them succeed. So let's just be very, very clear about that. Outside of that, you know, honestly, the new stuff Rogan confirmed is everything we've been hearing. I've never run with the idea it's 512-bit because I think that doesn't make any sense. Like 512-bit's such a waste of energy when you have GDR6 going up to and even possibly above 18 gigabit per second chips. Put that on a 384-bit bus and you're done. You can get to a terabyte per second of bandwidth with GDR6 without using these 290x levels of power usage here, right? So that's what I think, and that's what's been rumored the whole time. However, there's also going to be HBM versions. That's another thing everyone has been reporting forever. The question becomes, where the heck is it? Because it's still, to me, I mean, look, we're in August and we still doesn't feel like we know everything about Big Navi. And so I have to assume something's wrong, or AMD is so confident they're keeping rumors down to a minimum. So that's really all I have to say about the performance levels. I saw some people trying to argue I changed my story. Guys, I've never changed my story. I think AMD's trying to double 5700 XT performance, and I would be blown away if they couldn't at least make an 80 CU card with HBM. I don't know, right? 70% better than the 5700 XT. Like, if it's not at least 70% better, I think it's a failure. But again, I don't work at AMD. I feel like some people come to the right. I feel like some people act like because someone leaked something, it's their job to make the company not fuck it up. And that's not my job. So, I mean, that's all there really is to say. But what's abundantly clear is this. From within Nvidia, they clearly think Big Navi could possibly beat the 2080 Ti by 40%. And then there's other people who think AMD could get to over double. I don't know what the actual truth will be. I think it, and again, I literally ended my last Ampere video by myself literally saying a quote Cortex. I showed a quote of me saying, I will be surprised if it's not 40% better than the 2080 Ti if these specs are correct. So that's all I can say. Am I saying it 100% will be that strong? No. Will I be surprised? Yes, they're doubling compute units, upping clock speeds, over doubling bandwidth, and increasing IPC. If they can't double 5700 XT performance, it's clear something went wrong. What else is there to say? All right, let me see what I'm sorry, guys. I don't mean to come in super hot with this live stream, but man, the misinformation being spread, people putting words in my mouth is getting to epic levels. Tom's fighting the hordes today. Yeah, I know. And anyways, what else do I have? I do want to make sure I get through all my notes. I rewatched my recent videos too, and I don't know where people are getting this idea that I've changed anything. I've always said around 80 CUs. Although, again, I want to be clear. I don't think it's just about the compute units. I think at a certain point, adding more cores isn't the solution. You need to clock them faster and get more IPC. I think that's abundantly clear when you look at Turing scaling with SMs. Let me see what else I have in these notes. Yeah, and so I guess let me just go through the info one more time. Here's the only things I've reported. And this is, so again, for the people that say I'm changing my story, here's literally what I've said. I think AMD has been trying to double 5700 XT performance, 1. AMD thinks they can beat the 3080. 3, NVIDIA is clearly worried about Big Navi. That's why we have these rumors of a 3090, because they don't want AMD to get close to a Titan. And 4, the information on Big Navi is getting comically scarce for how close we're getting to its supposed launch. So I think it's possible the top one's delayed. At least the HBM versions are probably not coming out till next year. That's it. That's all I've ever said. You guys can't say I'm making anything else up or changing my story. That's all I've ever said from the start. Most of my info has been about Ampere because I don't have the same degree of info about RDNA 2. Okay. Other things from this month before we get to reader mails. Hey, sorry if it seems like I'm coming in super hot today. Super hot today, guys. I kind of am because I've just seen so many people spreading BS online. And if I'm here in a live stream, you can't say I'm spreading BS. Here I am telling you what I think. Anyways, I want to clarify a few things about the PlayStation 5. My overall point, and again, when you watch, and again, there's people like spreading BS. Actually watch my last PlayStation 5 Xbox video if you want to know what I think. There's no shortcuts. You can't go to Reddit and see what a bunch of people spouting bullshit think. You have to watch the video yourself if you want to know what I think. I'm not going to answer it for you. You go watch it. It's on you. If you want to spout BS, you have to actually watch the video. I know that's a high bar for some people to clear, but that's it. And that's why I don't respond to most questions on Twitter, because it's like, I said it in the video. Watch the video. The thing is this. I never said in that PlayStation 5 video that I think it's going to, crush Xbox performance in every game. I just said it has components that people aren't talking about. And if you're staking your reputation on saying the Xbox is going to beat the PS5 in graphics in every game, you could end up looking pretty stupid. That's my point. And now you're starting to see fanboys from Sony's camp go apeshit as well. And now that's starting to annoy me, right? Because all of a sudden, all the PlayStation fanboys are like, ha ha, PlayStation twice as strong as Xbox. I never said that. And if you think the PlayStation's twice as strong as the Xbox, you're also going to look stupid. That was the point of that video. The Xbox is really powerful. The PlayStation is really powerful. But just because they both use a lot of AMD components does not mean the specs are everything you think they are. They're different consoles, right? Like if you think of AMD's architectures and IP as Legos, let's say I put a bunch of Legos on a table, right? You could build very different castles out of this same set of Legos. That's what Microsoft and Sony have done. They've built very different castles looking at the same Lego pieces. They have different visions of what a powerful console is. And we're just going to have to see how that pans out. I think it's abundantly obvious, though, by now that PlayStation's going to have a lot of games that look really, really, really good. So I would really emphasize people got to stop doubling down that like one's going to humiliate the other one. I'm not so sure about that. We're going to have to let the games do the talking. We're going to have to let the games do the talking for 2 years. You can't just see one, bull shot and go, oh, this one's stronger. So anyways, I do want to emphasize that because I'm starting to see PlayStation fanboys go apeshit. I remember telling Red Gaming Tech this. Yeah, the Xbox, and this was 2 months ago. I said to him, he says the Xbox fanboys are pretty bad right now. And I said, yeah, I know they are, but give it a few months. The PlayStation fanboys are going to start going apeshit in August or something as well. And here we are. I can only imagine how bad the flame wars are going to get soon. Anyways, the last thing I want to say is about the PlayStation 5 exclusives that I talked about. So, guys, God of War 2 is coming, and I think it is coming within a year and a half. Well, within about a year and a half, from now. And there seems to be a lot of misinformation about why that's possible. So let me pull something up here. God of War release date. The God of War reboot, I would call it, right? God of War 1 came out April 20, 2018. So it didn't come out 2 years ago, guys. It came out over 2 years ago. And if I say God of War 2 is coming out late 2021, that's like 3.5 years. You really don't think they can finish a sequel in 3.5 years? What? So that's all I'm going to say. I don't know if they'll necessarily reveal it in August, but they have a reveal ready if they want to show it off. And I guess I'll just be honest too. I've actually heard a different studio maybe mostly working on it with what's his name? Cory Barlog still producing it and overseeing it. So a lot of people saying that's not possible don't know a lot of the behind the scenes. And the only other thing I'll say about this PS5 exclusive thing is the amount of exclusives coming from Sony, by the way, and some from Xbox I've heard as well, is they've been holding back, guys. I'm going to be honest. I think a lot of people could get an exclusive reveal right just by guessing at a likely game, because one source literally told me so many things he's been told are coming out that he doesn't think they're all true, and he has to think about it before he tells me anything. So all I'm going to say is I really think next gen is going to be exciting. And again, I don't really think Sony needs to show off God of War if that other exclusive or other two exclusive actually I've heard are coming. Let's say if the hills aren't silent, I don't know why you would need to show off God of War. And there's another one too, actually. Oh, and again, for what the secret exclusive was, I left some bread crumbs, make sure I say that correctly this time, in the comments so that I can prove I knew what it was the whole time. Anyways, let us get... Well, Bloodborne's coming to PC, guys. I actually don't know anything about it coming to PlayStation. Well, and I assume they'll remaster it for PS5 as well then, right? I don't know anything about Bloodborne 2, but I think it's obvious they would want to make a Bloodborne 2. Okay. And that's it for the things I wanted to address from this month. Again, I apologize if I'm coming in hot today. There's just been a lot of BS online. Before I get to the reader mails, I will say a small summarizing theme is just remember, this is fan supported on Patreon. We're actually already halfway to the next goal. And once we get to that next goal, I think that's when you people who like remember, I have another podcast, Flyover States, where I interview people all over the world in the United States and talk about political issues and things going on right now. Don't forget to subscribe to that, Flyover States. It's on YouTube. You can subscribe to the RSS feed, and patrons get it early and ad-free as well, just like all my other podcasts. So just remember, if you want more Flyover States, let's get to that next Patreon goal. If you want, Yeah, I mean, when it comes to all the other side projects, it's really imperative to have us hit that goal so that I can really start hiring, frankly, some fact checkers and video editors to keep the quality consistent and going upwards. So just remember that, guys, that this is fan supported. There's like no in-video ads. Have you guys noticed for how big my channel is, how few VPN ads there are? It's because I turn them down. It's because I want the majority of the funding to come from people who actually like the content. Because frankly, I don't like making the ads, just to be honest with you guys. Even though I try to put a lot of effort into making them funny, as you can tell. And also because if a majority of the funding is from patrons, that means I don't have to care what people think, right? I can talk shit about AMD as much as I want. And anyways, though, that's that. Just remember, this is Patreon supported. And now it's time to get through the patron questions. A ton of patron questions this month and a lot of good ones. So let me get into them here. Let me put down a timestamp. All right. Anyways, Brian Steiner writes in and he says, what are your thoughts on Ryzen APUs launching for vendors only? Right. So Brian's talking about how Renoir is OEM only right now for the most part, although I'm sure there's vendors selling them on Newegg already. And I've always said, if you listen to Broken Silicon, it would be hard to segment Renoir, right? Because if you look at its performance, if you were to clock it faster, it's as good as a 3800X. And yet it probably costs less to make than a 3800X. And yet it comes with a graphics card that if you overclock it, seems to be as good as a GTX 1050 or higher, right? You have people playing games in 1080p 60, medium settings, even higher ultra sometimes. So how do you segment that? What do you price that at? It seems overpriced to be above $200 to me, but at the same time, it almost seems underpriced if it's below $300 given its gaming performance. Yet it seems to be lacking PCIe lanes, as a lot of people thought it would, because Renoir lacks that. I don't know. It's a hard to segment product. It really is good for OEM builds where they can have a default that can play games well. And remember, I've also been told, and again, it's only one source, so don't double down on this, but I've been told big Renoir could be coming. So if there's a 12 CU model that has the full 16 PCIe lanes, that's the one I would launch to the do-it-yourself market next to Zen 3 if I were AMD. And I've heard, right, remember in the earnings call, AMD said some version of Renoir is coming to do-it-yourself. Does anyone remember that? Maybe that's it. I don't know, though. All I can say is I've always thought Renoir would be really hard to segment in the do-it-yourself market. And yeah, that's all I can say. We'll see what happens, right, Brian? All right, Clean Sweep writes in, and he says, any thoughts on AMD AIB partners launching new RX 5600 XTs, 5700 XTs in the past month? Seems like odd timing with RDNA 2 coming closer. Yeah, actually, Clean Sweep, I don't think it is odd timing. What are we on the 10th version of the GTX 1650? No, AIB's launch versions of cards up until the new launch comes out. So I wouldn't read into that at all, honestly. And you have to remember, it's like once RDNA 2 starts coming out. So let's say RDNA 2 comes out in October and it's like the 6700 XT. I'm not saying it will for sure, but let's say that. And then they launch the 6800 XT in like November, and then the 6900 XT in January. Who knows when the 6500 XT is coming out. They could keep selling like $200 5700 XTs for a while. If I remember correctly, a lot of those AIB 5700 XTs launching now are super cost-cutting versions. Hint, hint. Those might be versions they plan to drop to $200 before the 6500 XT comes out. So I just wouldn't read into it. This is a normal thing you see all the time. All right. The ninth dude in and almost had another stroke, and he says, I've been thinking a lot about prices recently with where the consoles are going to be in terms of performance and price performance and how it will impact GPU prices. If both consoles are going to be the RTX between RTX 2080 and 2080 Ti, somewhere around there for around $500-ish, does that mean AMD will release a similar performance card at this performance level or lower? And my answer is actually yes. Like, think about it. Again, guys, like at a minimum, I'm so tired of people poo-pooing the PS5. At a minimum, the PS5 is clocked like 20% higher than a 5700 XT. At a minimum, it's going to have like a 7-10% IPC increase. Guys, we're talking about something close to a 2080 Ti. And I think at least in a couple of years, the Xbox Series X will show it's stronger than a 2080 Ti. So if that's the case, what you cannot launch something weaker than a 2080 Ti for over 500, in my opinion, or at least not much weaker. So yeah, I think you're going to get at least an RTX 3060 around 2080 performance with better ray tracing for like 350. I think that's what's coming. And I think AMD is going to have, basically what's in the PS5 as the 6700 XT for like $400 or less. Like, I think that's coming, guys. I think that's common sense. I think they have to. I really do think prices are going to come down this year. And if they don't, it's because performance was just up a ton. Anyways, let me write that down as a timestamp. Call it price performance this fall. VI Pass writes in and he says, we all know the next GPUs consoles are going to be big, exciting, but there's one thing no one is really talking about and should be addressed by everyone. What do you think availability for next gen GPUs and consoles will be like this fall? You're saying we should sell our graphics cards, and I want to know, even if I get a good price for my 2080 Ti, when the heck am I going to be able to get a new GPU? How long am I going to have to wait? That's a very good question, VI Pass. I'm glad you asked it. I mean, I think by Christmas, right? And I think even if they're not out by Christmas, it's because they're selling out and used cards are going down in price. Although, honestly, though, like, I remember when I got a 480, an RX 480, I had an R9 390X. I sold it for $300 right before the 480 came out. Then I couldn't get a hold of the 480 for a while, and I was just forced to use, I don't even remember, eventually I got one, and then it actually broke, and I sent it back for a full refund in under 30 days from Newegg. And then I got a Fury Nitro for the same price. And man, Fury Nitros in late 2016 were such a bargain. And I was really happy with how that turned out. But yeah, there's about a month where I had to shift around and didn't know what graphics card I was going to use. And I think that could happen again. Like, I'm seeing lots of people say they just sold their 2080 Ti for like $1,100. And I'm like, man, if you can get $1,100 for that, that's more. I think that's more than what the 3080 will cost. You'll get a 3080 and maybe have enough money to buy a PS5 too. I mean, if that's the case, I would probably sell my card, but I hope you have a backup, RX 560 until then, because I don't know how long you're going to have to wait. I don't know what availability will be, but I'd be very surprised if you couldn't get the card if you tried hard by Christmas. So just think of it that way, right? And remember, I'm not selling my Radeon 7. It does work for me, and I'm probably going to wait till RDNA 3. So just keep in mind that when I say you should sell your card, I'm assuming you're someone who could use $1,000, use saving $500. Whereas for me, this card is my business, so I have to keep it. So just keep in mind where I'm coming from. All right, Kerry Baldino writes in, and he says, hey, Tom, happy August to everyone. So with the next generation of GPUs right around the corner, what do you think the chances are for a mainstream non-Titan card to be released with 16 gigabytes of RAM or more? Ampere or Navi? I love my Radeon 7, but I cannot get another at a decent price for my new build, and I need that higher VRAM for work. Hoping to not have to burn money on a Titan RTX, but newer leaks are looking like conservative VRAM mounts again. Yeah, you know what, man? I give it 50-50. I mean, the 3080 is going to be a 10 gigabyte card. Maybe there will be 20 gigabyte versions of the 3080, which would be probably really cool for creators. But I think the 3080 is going to be at least 710 gigabytes. I think the 3080 Ti is maybe 1,000 for 12 gigabytes. And I think the 3090 is 1,500 for 24 gigabytes. Again, guessing, not confirming, trolls on Twitter. And if that's the case, yeah, I don't know. I think the Radeon 7 was a steal. I think AMD, it's insane. They charged $700 for the Radeon 7. I snagged one for my doing work on my channel when I needed it. I honestly don't know that there's a good chance you're going to get more than 12 gigabytes for less than $1,000, because I just don't know why they wouldn't charge more. But it's going to come down to competition. If AMD did beat Ampere, which I still think Ampere is going to keep the performance crown, if AMD did beat Ampere, who knows what that would do to prices? But I almost wonder Nvidia would be too stubborn to lower prices right away. I don't know. I really think the Radeon 7 is just a steal. And when you got it, you got it. And the next 16 gigabyte cards are going to be more. Having said that, it sounds like the 3090 or Titan may have 24 gigabytes, again, I guess you might say. And I'm sure AMD will launch some pretty high VRAM count versions above 1,000. So I guess what I'm saying is, well, you can't get 16 gigabytes for under $1,000, most likely. You'll probably be able to get 24 gigabytes for less than $2,000. At least, I don't know. Do with that information what you will. Nanite84 writes in, and he says, with the new GPUs from AMD and Nvidia having TDPs in the 300 to 375 watt range, what do you expect the cooling solutions to use to keep noise down while keeping the GPUs from throttling? Nvidia and AMD do not want to be like Framerate cards that were hot and loud, do they? No. I don't think there's any chance Nvidia launches a card that is crazy loud and overheats your... Well, I mean, look, if it uses 350 watts, that heat's got to go somewhere, guys. But I really don't think Nvidia would launch another Fermi. And I think AMD's over being stupid. I don't know why the 5700 XT had a cheap blower cooler again. I don't know why. But I really just don't think they're going to do that this time. That's my honest answer. All right. Miles writes in, hey, Tom. All right. So let me put down a timestamp here, kind of getting into more next-gen console questions. Let's see. Miles writes in, he says, hey, Tom, with next-gen consoles coming loaded with fast SSDs, when do you think game devs start requiring SSDs for their games and PC? I think some devs are going to require you to have an SD next year. So soon. And he says, do you think they would settle for any old SSD? That's an interesting question. I'm sure there will be some devs that only require a SATA one, but you have to remember SATA's protocol is like crazy old, inferior to what's being used with an NVMe drive. Like, I believe it can only send data in one direction at a time. So think about it. That means if you have an SSD that's a SATA one, if you're sending data both ways, you're basically limited to almost half the bandwidth, right? And so it's like, guys, NVMe SSDs are going to be the standard within a few years. That's just really my opinion. And I think what you've got to remember is that it's going to be one of these things where they're like, well, the game won't even boot without an SSD, or it will, but it's going to run like just absolute horrible, right? Because the way you build a game, listen to the SSD talk, Broken Silicon. When you build a game around an SSD, it's easier to build a game for SSDs than it is for hard drives. It takes a lot less busy work and they take up less space. So once devs switch to SSDs, it's switched. And then after that, I think you might actually just get higher frame rates with faster SSDs. So that's what Unreal Engine demonstrated. It's going to start adding performance in certain scenarios within a game when you have a faster SSD. Now, I want to be clear about something, though. I'm not saying go buy a $1,000 SSD right now, because those games aren't out yet. Don't worry yet. Personally, I don't know why anyone wouldn't have an SSD right now. It's bonkers. But you don't need to buy the fastest one yet unless you're going to use it. I have a PCIe 4.0 drive. I have one because it helps my business. Literally, when I'm moving files quickly, I use over 50% of it. And then if I'm rendering at the same time, you can see my 5 gigabyte per second SSD actually get up to like 80% usage and spike to 100 repeatedly. I have one for a reason. In games, it's noticeably faster. It's absolutely noticeably faster. Not in all games. Not in all games. If I'm playing Half-Life 1, Black Mesa, if I'm playing the remaster of Half-Life 1, there's still loading screens when you go between sections, even with a 4.0 NVMe. It's hilarious. But it's really quick loading screens. And games that take advantage of it, like Battlefield 5, I do think they're like 20% faster than my old SSD RAID. But no, it's not like 3 times faster like it probably should be based on the bandwidth. And so for gaming, you don't need it yet. Just don't worry. Don't worry. By the time you need fast SSDs for games, they will be a lot cheaper. That's when you should buy it. So again, I think a lot of people get worried about this change. And it's like, yes, change is coming and faster than a lot of people think. But at the same time, when that change is here, there will be cheaper options. All right. Mikon Andrews writes in and he says, what's your thoughts on next-gen consoles using DLSS or DirectML implementation? I mean, guys, I honestly don't have much to say about DLSS and consoles. They're going to use something similar to it. I'm not worried about the details. Again, people, I think, keep worrying about the details because they see DLSS as magic that only Nvidia can do. And it's like, no, it's going to be like G-Sync. Nvidia had G-Sync first, and then AMD had FreeSync, and it wasn't that hard, right? This is harder to do than FreeSync, but they'll do it. AMD has the money. They're going to do it. And the consoles have had like dedicated upscaler chips for a while. Honestly, if you're on a PS4 Pro and playing a game in half 4K, it looks better than it does on a PC. It really does. And so whether it's DLSS or upscaling chips, they're going to use something and it'll be fine. I don't worry about the details because I'm sure that's something they won't overlook. And I think he also went on to ask about like frame rates and stuff. I think I cut off part of his question, but I want to say something about this too. I'm not too worried about frame rates on next gen consoles. There's going to be some games that are 30 FPS, but I'm going to be honest. Some of those slow moving third person shooters, as long as that's a locked 30, it's a single player game. It's honestly not that bad for me, but I think the majority of games are going to have a 60 hertz performance mode. And I think this is like common sense. Like, think about it. Why would devs choose one mode or the other? I think this is a win-win situation. I think the majority of games are going to come with a, jaw-dropping screenshot, option where it's like locked 30 FPS, 4K ray tracing. Oh my God, can you believe how good this looks, like the Horizon demo? And then I think they'll just add a 60 hertz mode because why wouldn't you? You have the 30 hertz mode for your trailers, frankly, so you can have good trailers. And then you have the 60 hertz mode for what people are actually going to play. And then hopefully they'll also have a 120 hertz mode, even if it's all the way down to 1440p or even 1080p. Hopefully there's a 120 hertz mode just so when you go online, you can be more competitive, especially in racing games. And frankly, when I look at how good, the latest Forza games look on PC and on even Xbox One X, like I expect that to have like at least a 1440p 120 hertz mode and be photorealistic. I mean, Forza already almost looks photorealistic. So if it doesn't on Series X, something's wrong. I don't know. Anyways, and Keith Davana Boyna, hope I said that right, writes him and says, was the Hellblade 2 in-engine footage actually real time? Probably. I think some of it was and some of it wasn't based on just glancing at it, actually. I think it looks just as good as the Unreal Engine 5 demo. Right, but the Unreal Engine 5 demo had 1,000 buildings exploding and collapsing at the same time in real time. Do not compare a bullshot trailer to the Unreal demo. He says, Hellblade 2 is not, he says, but yeah, so why don't they show that? That looks more impressive than Unreal Engine 5. So again, guys, the point of Unreal Engine 5 demo was to show that they could stream in like 30 million polygon assets in real time while not crushing the frame rate. They were showing 100x polygon counts with explosions going on in real time. Those were real time physics explosions, crumbling, dynamic destruction. That was way more impressive than anything else I've seen. Horizon, for instance, looked way prettier, but I didn't see an entire city collapse in real time. That's what made the Unreal Engine demo impressive. And I think people keep forgetting this. It was a demo. It was to show what their engine's capable of on the next gen consoles. And what was really impressive to me was they said I forgot what it was, the polygonal assets only took up like some part of the assets that a dev told me would usually take up 5 gigabytes. Epic confirmed it took up 768 megabytes of space. So how good do you think and that's the point. They were demonstrating what their engine's capable of, because frankly, they want to run that engine on a smartphone, and smartphones don't have as much RAM. So imagine how good that demo will look and how much higher the frame rates will be if they're using more than a gigabyte of RAM to run it, guys. That was the point of that demo. All right. Let's see. Confirmed SK writes in and says, with the next-gen consoles around the corner, along with the RTX 3000 series and RDNA 2, do you think Nintendo Switch has done enough to sway developers over to their platform? I'm a longtime PC gamer, but outside of console and PC exclusives, I feel it's a missed opportunity to exclude the Nintendo Switch successor. No, I don't. I do not think Nintendo has won over developers. Look, guys, developers will put their games on the platforms that have a lot of people playing on them to make money. A lot of people bought the Switch. It's really successful. So, of course, they're putting their games on it. But the Switch is just nowhere near powerful enough to run next-gen games. It's just not. Like, it's just not as good. It just can't be done. So I think what you're going to see is the Switch will get some third-party games this year, but they need to update late next year. And again, people will say, "Oh, well, they should have the Switch 2 come out this year." I disagree. I think the Switch 2 should come out next year when they can, for a reasonable price, get something like RDNA 3, Hopper on 7 nanometer or Ampere on 7 nanometer, some type of APU with Nvidia, maybe buying ARM, something for a reasonable price, because I think Nintendo can afford to not have this fall's games. They can afford to, but then they should wait for prices to come down and launch something, I don't know, right? Probably a little weaker than the Xbox Series S in a handheld late next year. If they could do that. But you got to understand, the problem with developers and Nintendo is they don't even have trophies or achievements yet. Like, why aren't there Nintendo stamps collections or whatever they would call them? I think that'd be funny if it was like Mario stamps. Where are these achievements? Their online infrastructure is, frankly, as far as I can tell, behind the PS3, let alone the 360 or modern consoles. Developers do not like that, and Nintendo is not easy to work with compared to Sony or Microsoft. So again, if your question is, has Nintendo done enough to sway developers? No. Nintendo's just made a really popular console, and developers will always put games on popular consoles. But I think Nintendo's got a long ways to go in terms of actually modernizing their business. I really do. All right, Manuel Nascimento writes in, hope I said that right. It says, "Hey, Tom, I hope you are well. I'm doing okay. I've been increasingly saddened and frustrated by how much tribalism and fanboyism has come to Sony, Xbox, AMD, Nvidia discussions. Does it have an impact on limiting the rationale and educated conversations on gaming and tech? In particular, sometimes I get the feeling on Broken Silicon that you're holding back on some comments because you fear fanboy backlash. So to educate people, could you please speak a little bit about why fanboys make a disservice to themselves if they reach fanatic lines, which I've seen some fanatics, lines of thinking, and how much better informed tech purchases can be if you aren't a fanboy?" I mean, honestly, Manuel, I could talk about this for hours. But what I will say is that I admit it. I was definitely holding back on some opinions on Broken Silicon and in my videos for a while because I just didn't. It's not just the fanboys. I really do, whether I succeed or not, try to be objective. I try, but you can never be perfectly objective. And I held back in some of my comments. And I'm just not going to do that anymore. And I think you guys saw that in my recent AMD, Nvidia, and PlayStation 5 videos. I'm not holding back. And if you call me a fanboy, what you got to know is, I think sometimes tech tubers and podcasters do this thing where they're like, I owned a Sega Dreamcast, and I owned a 360, and I owned a PlayStation 1, and that proves I'm not a fanboy. I'm not going to go down the list of consoles I've owned, although there's been a bunch, and I mostly game on PC, because I don't think that proves anything. We all have intrinsic biases. What I'm going to say is I'm giving you my honest opinion, right? That's my promise, that I'm giving you my honest opinion and that I'm not pulling punches. So let's say I like one company more than another on average. If they fuck up, I'm going to say they did, right? Like I continue to harp on PlayStation about backwards compatibility. And now that I hear more that they might not have it, I personally think that's ridiculous. And so that's all I can do. Can I promise I don't have preferences? No, but I'll promise I'm not lying to you. And I'll promise that if I see any of these companies do something stupid, I mean, I did a whole podcast about AMD drivers, despite the whole time before that saying, I think AMD drivers are better than Nvidia. But AMD's drivers were so bad last fall and winter that I just had to go, what the hell is going on? And so it is what it is. All I can promise is that I'm being authentic. And that if I see someone do something I don't like, I'll talk about it. And, this is why we have reader mail, right? You get patrons in that I know hopefully mean well. And if you think you disagree, put it into corrections and omissions, and we'll talk about it in the podcast. If you think I messed something up, say it in the, like I'm here on a live stream, guys. I think some people try to act like I hide things. I could not be less hiding things about what I think about stuff. There's no agenda. There's no hiding. And I just hope that's clear. All right. Enough of me, my self-righteous ranting. Anyways, So there's been some tips. So let us go into. We are now officially in the live Q&A, and I saw there were some tips, but I told you guys to wait till the end. Anyways, Fire2Box says your videos and speculations have been great to help me. Been watching them for months, so here's a small monetary tip. Yep, thank you. Some of that will go towards getting that dog a bone. There's a dancing hippo from Lebo King Kilo. That's interesting. Okay, let's see the live chat here. Actually, then let me pull up the Discord in case patrons want to type in the after video chat section. Remember, if you're a patron and you're in there, I'll just glance over here for free and see what you guys are saying. Obviously, I'll notice the tipped questions the most, but yeah. Let me see what we got here. Should they upgrade PCIe 3.0 motherboards for next-gen GPUs? I think, again, right, why did I get a 3950X? It's because I had to upgrade Christmas 2019. That's why I upgraded when I did. Frankly, I should have probably bought a 2700X system way before I got that 3950X. I was still slumming it with a 6700K doing heavy rendering and multitasking. It was honestly slowing down my system. But I wanted to wait for the best stuff, and I just said whatever's out in Christmas is when I'm upgrading. So I think it depends. If you're someone where this is just a hobby and you can wait forever, I don't know why you'd get a PCIe 4.0 motherboard now unless you need it. Do you need it now? Then why are you buying it now? Zen 3 is coming out. I would wait for that. I would wait for Zen 4, actually, because it sounds nuts. And I'm hoping Alder Lake will be good. Although I got to say, not very hopeful about Intel right now. As I've been saying for a year, Intel ain't looking good in 2021. No financial advice. Got to say that. Carbon Cry writes in, be real. How much did you pre-game this stream? I haven't drank any alcohol today. I mean, I'm just drinking coffee. If anything, I drink alcohol to calm me down because I have ADHD. No, I'm a very calm person when I drink. Until you get to that certain level, right? Then you just get mad. FPSF writes in, hello, do you have some news about Jack and Daxter? Well, I have to be careful because I promised I wouldn't say what some of the exclusives are. But no, I have no info on Jack and Daxter. I think, and the reason I think I can just openly talk about Jack and Daxter is, guys, I don't think one's coming, at least not from Naughty Dog. If they made another Jack and Daxter, it'll probably be outsourced to I don't know. Sony Bend probably wouldn't make it. I don't know. Sony should probably buy another studio and use it to make stuff no one else wants to work on. Because here's my problem, and I heard Colin Moriarty say this on the podcast Sacred Symbols. I completely agree. If they make a Jack and Daxter, that's an alternative to The Last of Us or Uncharted 5. Would you really prefer that over Uncharted 5? And Naughty Dog's rumored to be working on some giant sci-fi epic game. So do you want a new IP with photorealistic sci-fi combat, or do you want another Jack and Daxter? That's why I don't think they'll make another Jack and Daxter, guys. Just because, Naughty Dog's not making it, and if Naughty Dog, because they have better things to work on, in my opinion, and if Naughty Dog's not making it, then who else is making it? And if someone besides Naughty Dog is making it, is it really Jack and Daxter? Is it just 343 making Halo? Does that really make you as excited as Halo 2, that demo they showed? I don't know. At a certain point, I think franchises just need to retire and we need new games. I can't honestly get over this idea of can we have another sequel? Can we just have new games? I would like new games, new stories. But that's my opinion. You think Sony will share DLSS tech with AMD? I think the entire agreement is AMD is free to take things they co-develop with Microsoft and Sony. And again, I'm not so sure those patents were for DLSS tech, guys. I'm aware there's a Sony patent going around. AMD will have an answer to DLSS. There's no way AMD wouldn't make something. They're not stupid. That's my answer. I also notice your profile picture is a Mustang. I have a Mustang, so nice, Ivan. Carbon Cry writes in, what do you think about Nvidia buying ARM? I think it should happen. I'm sorry. Wrong wording. That is not what I think. Let me write this down as a timestamp too. I think it is in Nvidia's best interest to buy ARM. I'm not saying I want it to happen. I think it's in Nvidia's best interest, because look at Renoir. This thing's pushing them out of laptops, and with ARM's ubiquitous adoption coming, you're seeing Microsoft try to get ARM working on Windows. You're seeing Apple using ARM. ARM will be well supported, I think, within 10 years. Do I think it's going to replace x86? I'm not sold on that. Not what I'm saying. But I think Nvidia needs to be able to make APUs that directly compete with AMD and Intel. Nvidia needs to be able to make their own APUs. They can't just rely on this version of something else in a smartphone that's a quad core and hope it gets in the Switch 2. They need to make their own 12 core APU designed from the ground up. I think it's a good move for Nvidia. I think it's a good move. I wonder what that means for Apple, though. You almost wonder why Apple didn't buy ARM, to be honest. I wouldn't be surprised if Nvidia buys a 50% stake in ARM and Apple buys up a significant share so Nvidia can't boss Apple around. That's probably what could end up happening if I had to guess. At least that's what I would do if I was Apple, because you do not want to have Nvidia control the board of that company while you're making your laptops from them. Oh my God, what a disaster. Now let me turn off that noise. Let's see, this year is 2020. Lebo King Kilo writes him, so the year is 2026. AMD has moved beyond 3 nanometer, and he's saying hypothetically, and 3 nanometer in silicon is near. It's the end of 4 reductions. I think we'll be to 3 nanometer. So we'll be to 5 nanometer next year. So I think we'll be in 3 nanometer by 2025, not 2026. But he says, what are consoles made on in 2026? I don't know, man. I think Microsoft may stop making traditional consoles by then, and I think Sony's even played around with that idea in interviews. So who knows what's happening by then? But by then, yeah, at least 3 nanometer silicon. They may even wait for 2 nanometer in 2026. Yeah, I don't know. I almost feel like the PS6, if there is one, is going to be 2025, right? Again, all speculation. Don't quote me, guys. Toner Inc. writes in, Tom, did you hear Patreon could be in trouble with arbitrations with Sargon? I would support you. If not Patreon, I can't stand them. Well, then you don't want to support me, man. I really have nothing else to say. I'm not going to get into this whole debate back and forth. I'm on Patreon. That's what hosts my stuff. And it is a lot better than YouTube. Let me guys know. So if you want to support me, go to Patreon. Otherwise, I don't know what to tell you. I've had to do this in several live streams. You're literally asking me to upend my whole business for some court case you're following. And it's not going to happen. I have over 500 patrons. I'm not nuking the platform they're using because one person wants me to. So if you want to support me, it's on Patreon. Don't know what else to tell you, man. Let me see. And Keith writes in just a clarification for that Patreon question involving Hellblade. Right. Okay, and Keith. I was saying Xbox Series X Showcase should have showed Project Mara by Ninja Theory. Oh. Yeah, and I was talking to Cortex about this, and and let's just say, I don't want to quote people. I've been talking to several tech tubers too, not just Cortex, and some people have said, have we misjudged the performance of the Xbox Series X? And I think no. I think the numbers are there. The one thing I think people are underemphasizing is how much of a problem it might be that it has that segmented memory, and I can get into why it would have that segmented memory. It's for their server APUs. Remember, the Xbox Series X is a server APU they're selling at a console. People keep forgetting that. But anyways, though, and what I've been saying is, no, I think the Xbox Series X is really weak. What you saw with that Halo demo was a benchmark of Microsoft's competence, and it's not looking too good, is it? Look, the hardware can't lie. That hardware sounds incredibly powerful, unless there's something we don't know that's weak about it. I don't know, and so that's how I answer your question, Ann Keith. I don't know why they didn't show other demos. I don't know why they opened with a Halo that looks like Halo 3. I don't know. I don't know why Microsoft did that, but I think it's indefensible. They actually showed that look, and they have good looking games. And I know they have other exclusives they're working on. And I've had this suggested to me by one source that he honestly wonders if they're just behind because of COVID issues, if they did as good a job managing COVID delays, because otherwise I don't know how you don't explain that they didn't show these other exclusives I've heard about. I don't know. I don't know why they didn't show those games. I don't know why. but I think they should have. How's the coffee? It's all right. It's just from Hy-Vee, though, dude. Random nerd writes in. The coffee sponsorship is done for now, but they hope to buy another round of ads some point in the future. The Right Cafe writes in, what do you think the price SKUs will be for Navi? I mean, I think you know how big Navi is going to cost. I think the 6700 XT is going to be $400. I think the 6800, and it'll be probably about as strong as the next gen consoles, if not close. I think the 6800 XT is going to be your 3070, 3080 competitor, maybe 3080 competitor for $600. And then I think the 6900 XT, well, it depends. If it beats Ampere, they can charge as much as they want, but I find it unlikely AMD goes above $1,000 except for the HBM versions, right? Which, who knows? How good is that going to be at exporting, rendering, and coding? Because I don't want to get a new GPU. I love my Radeon 7 for professional work. I don't want to get a new GPU till RDNA 3 or Hopper, but hey, if Ampere or the biggest Navi with HBM can cut my render times in half again, I'll do it. Because time is money. But yeah, so when it comes to the prices of SKUs, again, I think what we're going to get is a bigger performance increase than previous gens. When I say previous, I mean RDNA 1 and Turing. I don't mean Pascal. And we'll have prices that are slightly lower than last gen. So I think we're going to get slightly lower prices, but more performance than what Turing got us. So I think it's going to be almost back to normal. I do not think prices are ever going to get back to the 290X, 7970 versus Kepler days, though, because it's not even just about mining. There's so many things you can do with the GPU now that has 20 teraflops that you just have to accept, right? I'm willing to pay easily $700 for the Radeon 7. Not for gaming, though. These graphics cards are super powerful. They can be used for other things besides gaming, and so they're going to demand a higher price. It's just how things are. All right, let me see here. Lulian Penzaru writes in and says, currently the Titan RTX cards are priced at $2,500. Yep. Do you feel like those are Ampere 24 gigabyte NVRAM are going to be as right, with maybe NV Cache too, are going to be as cheap as $1,500? If AMD competes, yeah, right. I think that's possibly what the 3090 is, and that sounds like a crazy powerful card. I think there's a chance, serious chance, Nvidia launches a 3090 that's almost the Titan, but has more RAM and so on and so forth, for like 1,500 or 2,000, because they know AMD's within 20-30%. I think there's a chance of that. And then they just launch some, Titan once they do the super refresh. That's kind of what I'm expecting. But we'll have to see. It all comes down to competition, though, as usual, guys. Mr. Juicy writes in and says, hey, man, as a competitive gamer, do you think I should wait for Intel's 11th gen? I think you should wait for Zen 3, dude. My dude, I would wait for Zen 3. Man, and it's funny, my Cypress Cove leak sounds like it's 100% correct. To the people that say I make up all these leaks, I'm not making them up, guys. At the very least, I'm not making them up. Zen 3 to me sounds more impressive than Rocket Lake, or at least same gaming performance while using half the energy. So I would definitely wait for that, and Zen 3 will be out this fall. So nah, man, I think Comet Lake's bad. That's my honest opinion. I think it's bad. I do not recommend it. I recommend whatever you're using now, you wait for Zen 3. And if it doesn't pan out, well, then you'll have a cheaper Rocket Lake that brings down prices. Yeah. I see someone. Oh, yeah. I have no idea what that guy just said in all caps. I have no idea what he's talking about. A good way for me to ignore your question is to act angry and type in all caps. Frankly, YouTube filters out those comments without me doing anything, though. Logic Max writes in and he says, do you think Apple Metal will change the video card world? I don't. That's pretty big talk. Change the video card world? No, but I hear very good things about Apple's Metal API. I hear very good things. That's really all I can say, right? I hear very good things. Change the world? I don't know. I think Sony and and then you look at Vulkan. There's some low-level APIs already. Angry Shark 92 writes in and he says, do you think no if we're getting a 3090 followed by a Titan Super refresh next year? That's what I've hypothesized. I don't know anything for sure, though. We don't know for sure. What we know is Ampere should be 30 to 50% better than Turing. What we know is Ampere should have a lot of great new features, things like tensor memory compression, NV cache, DLSS 3.0 at the very least. That's what we know. How Nvidia plans to price it is going to come down to competition. But like I've said, I think cheaper than before, slightly, more performance than before, right? That's what I think. So outside of that, it's up to Nvidia where they price the 3080 at, what they call the 3080, what they call a 3090, if they call anything a 3090. Remember, right up before Maxwell's launch, they were calling it the 800 series. Does anyone remember that? Maxwell was to a month or even weeks before launch called the 800 series. And then at the last minute, they called it the 900 series. So who knows if they'll call something the 3090 for sure. At the very least, no source of mine is sure of what they'll call things. All I know is that GA102 is really powerful. Nias writes in, sorry for sending question too early. Really enjoying your content. Keep up the great work. Don't apologize. It's just, I can't, I just might not get to answering it if it's sent too early. Message retracted by Jose. Okay. Well, thanks for the tip. Interesting. Tom Williams writes in, have Xbox made a mistake by focusing on 4K 60? That's an interesting question, I actually think. So, I mean, here's the thing. I do wonder if it's going to become a mistake if all Xbox tries to do is show last-gen graphics at a higher frame rate. Because how many people have I heard say they can't tell the difference between 1440p and 4K, but they can tell the difference with ray tracing and better graphics effects? I do think that Microsoft needs to make sure they don't just insist on some mandate, because guys, devs aren't lazy or stupid. They make the game they think looks best. And sometimes that's an 1800p. And, I've been playing around. I have a 4K 120 hertz monitor. Finally, now I'm not 1080p gaming, as you know, from my recent Concept D monitor review. And I can honestly say that around 1800p, as long as you have really, really good up-resing and scaling, which the consoles will have, 1800p looks pretty damn close to 4K. And with 1800p, you can probably show similar levels of quality, which is what it's always down to, right? This is something I've used as an example multiple times, how I noticed with Metro 2033 many years ago that if I ran the game at high settings, it looked almost the same in 900p versus 1080p. Or should I say, I couldn't tell the difference between high and ultra in 900p. So you add more pixels to show more detail, right? And at a certain point, you really shouldn't be upping the resolution unless you're upping the settings first to make sure you can tell the difference. So I think the target for next gen is going to be like 1800p dynamic resolution. That's kind of what I expect. And I just hope most games come with a half 4K 60 hertz mode. And half 4K has been used in a lot of PS4 Pro and Xbox One X titles. It's literally 1920 by 2160. So it's like rectangular shapes rendering. And they just do half the resolution of 4K, which, keep in mind, half the resolution of 4K is a higher resolution than 1440p. So that's what I hope they do. Full 4K at 30 hertz locked, and then maybe a dynamic resolution around half 4K. But maybe they turn down a few settings as well. Like, for instance, I heard that Spider-Man coming out is going to have a 4K 60 performance mode. I wonder if they just turn off ray tracing. I don't know. We'll see what they do, but it's going to be up to the devs, and I just hope they come with both. And I do think it would be a mistake to I do now think it would be a mistake to mandate all games have to be full 4K when no one can tell the difference between 1800p. But I do not necessarily... You can't make it a mandate, but I kind of wish they would mandate a 60 hertz mode in every game, to be honest. Because, I mean, come on, guys. Car Jesus says, Radeon Pro 7 or wait for CDNA? Well, do you need it? Again, guys, I feel like I keep making the same answer, right? Do you need a professional card now? I mean, if you need a professional card now, I think that Radeon Pro 7 has PCIe 4.0 support. You can get that for about $1,500. I would consider it. If you don't need it now, I don't know. Having said that, CDNA is not the same thing. I believe CDNA is going to literally not come with like graphics output. So I don't think CDNA is necessarily the right choice for you. And I've actually heard that RDNA2 will be good at like machine learning and certain professional tasks. So more likely what you'll want to wait for is the HBM2E version of Big Navi. That's probably what you want to wait for, if anything. But I mean, Radeon Pro 7, are you going to make use of PCIe 4.0? It's really a bargain then. Let me put that down as a timestamp. Keep moving. Okay, I'm through the tip question. No, wait. No, I almost missed one, guys. Make sure I almost missed one. Let me see here. Mr. Raptor writes in from the dinosaur periods and says, I want a new CPU. I got a 6700K. Yeah, I slummed it with a 6700K for way too long. He says, but can wait. Do I buy Zen 3 or Zen 4? Oh, I mean, if you still got a 6700K, I honestly, I don't know. I think Zen 3 is probably what I would target. I've got a friend who's in a similar boat to you. It just depends, right? Do you only game on PC? Is it holding back your performance? Are you gaming at 120 hertz? Then you probably want to just get Zen 3. Can you wait longer? Are you going to get a next gen console and just play that next year until Zen 4 comes out? But who knows when Zen 4 comes to consumers? I think it's coming out next year. I've done multiple videos. Zen 4 is probably coming next year, but doesn't mean it's coming to consumers with good availability until 2022. Do you want to wait that long? I don't know. I think Zen 3 is not a bad choice. And I think Zen 4 is going to be a big, big, big uplift on a new platform. So it's just if you're worth waiting for the new platform. But keep in mind, new platforms probably means lower stability at launch too, guys. So you might wait longer than you think. You know, I honestly, if you have a 6700K, I think Zen 3 is a pretty good choice, honestly. But, you know, your mileage will vary. All right, Caillou9 writes in, what's your opinion on the Joe Rogan? Let me even write that down as a timestamp, right? Feel like everyone has to talk about this. 1 second. Someone knock on my door. Yeah. Okay. Mail guy dropped something off. Sorry about that. Let me change the timestamp to a minute later. So, what are my opinions on the Joe Rogan thing? Honestly, I don't really have one. Like, it's kind of one of those things where I don't know why everyone has to care what everyone thinks about everything. Like, Joe Rogan is an MMA guy who clearly had a video game addiction. Would it really surprise you he would say negative things about video games? I don't care, right? I don't go to him to his opinion on video games, do you? So I honestly, my opinion is I didn't even watch it, by the way. I've just heard people talk about it, so I generally know what he said. Like, my opinion is everything we do is somewhat of a waste of time. And I mean, comparing video games to like reality TV, everyone does something that they veg out on and relax. I mean, frankly, I've gotten into hiking, which is good for you, but I listen to like Comedy Bang Bang and a bunch of comedy podcasts while I hike around. And some people would say that's a waste of time because I'm not writing a new book or making a new video, but I need a break. Right. And so maybe that's healthier than playing video games. But at the same time, sometimes I'm too tired to hike. And playing video games really stresses your mind more than, like, again, watching reality TV, at least most video games. So I don't see it as bad at all. And again, I think there's a good chance we're going to see old people not have as high Alzheimer rates as we go into the future because they'll be stressing their brain more playing video games. So I think video games are pretty good. They're just another, and it doesn't really matter, good or bad. What does any of it matter? I don't honestly know why people care too much about what he would have said about that. But I don't know. I heard he was pretty angry about when he said it. So I guess that's why. And let's be honest, Joe Rogan's like the biggest podcaster. So, of course, everyone's going to talk about something he says. I get it. I do get it. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't really care. Not strong feelings either way. And Keith writes in, anytime someone says, should I wait for, you should just tell them yes. If they really need it right away, they'd ignore that advice and buy it. Yeah, but I do think no one should be building PCs like right now, especially not with graphics cards. I will say that there are times where it's like, man, if you buy a high-end card now, I think the equivalent performance with better features is going to be half the price in a few months. So I do have to say that, like, I do not think you should buy a graphics card now. And I thought that, like, last year when Zen 2 was out was a much better time than the previous two mining boom eras to build with. So it does vary. But again, I think it really usually comes down to, do you actually need it, or are you just bored and want to buy something? Didu Gaming One says, any leaks on the pricing of Ampere cards? Man, so many people asking me about pricing. Guys, even what the leaks are, it doesn't matter. Nvidia will choose the pricing at the last minute based on competitiveness with AMD. So even if there are, remember the leaks that the 5700 XT was $500? And I heard AMD was actually considering charging $500 for the 5700, but then they changed their mind twice at the last minute. So again, it's like, I don't think there's much. Even if I received exact pricing information, maybe I would do it in a video, but I don't think, like, I would put giant disclaimers. This is definitely going to change, you know? Like, you almost wonder if you should report on a pricing leak just because you know it will probably change. Like, it would probably be more likely than not that the final price will be different than what they're planning to do now, right? Dale Johnson writes in, do you think X670 will be a thing? I mean, I heard it was going to be something, and it was just going to have a few more USB ports, a few more USB, lower power usage, right? So it doesn't need to be actively cooled as often. And then it would also have a few more PCIe lanes. But I also heard that they're planning to cancel X670. So I guess we'll see. I don't know for sure, but it honestly most likely sounds like it's canceled, to be honest. I guess that's my answer. Let me see. Am I missing up? No, there's a lot more questions. So let me see. Shimon writes in, bad bottleneck with 3060 and 2600. Not right away. I think an R5 2600, 12 threads at 4 gigahertz, even if it's just Zen Plus. I mean, look, that's weaker than the next gen consoles for sure, but I think it'll be fine this fall. You know, it's just, again, are you going to do 120 hertz gaming with that? And the newest games? Probably not, man. But, you know, like, luckily Zen 3 is coming out. All right, let me see. Zach Miklas writes in, how small will the Xbox Series S be? I mean, one thing a source told me is that they're going to make a big deal about how small it is. And so if you think about it, right, a 24 CU APU with at least two of the compute units disabled. So they disable the two least efficient compute units. I mean, and I think it's Van Gogh based. I think even if they clocked it to like 1.8 gigahertz, I mean, you know, Renoir uses like 65 watts. Something, I mean, I think the whole thing is going to use like 100 watts max. So less than half the energy of the Series X. And I think, you know, with that in mind, you could easily build something this big. Like, I think it's literally going to be, I mean, what would I compare it to? I don't know. I think it could literally be about the size of a Wii, you know, maybe even a little smaller. It doesn't have a disc player either, so they don't need to. And the SSD for the Xbox is like this big, right? So, I mean, the whole thing could seriously be like Wii sized. And I think they're going to make a big deal out of it. OJ says, nice curtains. They're all right. Zen 3 plus Ampere RDNA 2, possible to push 1440p super ultra wide. Okay, wait. Big question here. So you're saying if I get Zen 3 and high-end Ampere or RDNA 2, could I push 1440p super ultra wide? So 21 by 9. Oh, no, you mean 32 by 9, don't you? If it's super ultra wide. 240 FPS in a title like Battlefield. So you're basically saying, can I run almost 4K at 240 hertz? I don't know, man. It depends what settings you use. I guess it's like half 4K resolution, really. I don't know. I think with Zen 3, you'll be able to do above 160 hertz. I think with Titan RTX right now, you can already do 120 hertz 4K. Again, I've said with my Radeon 7, most of my games I can do 4K 120. So just turn down a few settings. So something 40, well, oh no, compared to my card, something at least 50% stronger than that. Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe in some games you'll just have to turn down settings. I don't think it's going to be that easy though. Let me see. Am I missing anything else? Do you think AMD will have an equivalent to NV cache? Yeah, it's high bandwidth cache. And I think the biggest Navi will probably have a high bandwidth cache again. At least I certainly hope so, because I'm not getting a new professional card until they have high bandwidth cache again. Let me see here. I'm just looking at the Discord chat, since I think I got through all of the tips. So let me see here what the Discord people are saying. If HBM gets cheap enough to put on more GPUs, this is from Pyroxide. If HBM gets cheap enough to put on more GPUs, do you think we will have more short PCBs that can have better cooling potential? See, that's the thing with HBM, is that because it's like 3D stacked to a certain degree, the lower layers need to be kept cool, and you're really only cooling the top layers unless you do like 3D printed pipes through the HBM, which so far we're not doing. Like, that's kind of the problem with HBM, is when you make really hot cards, you save on power usage, but then you're still forced to use super powerful cooling for that high-end card. And then it becomes big anyways. I mean, remember the Fury Nitro, like just how big that cooler was for just the tiniest card. It's almost like we're desperate. Like if we could just get HBM to be only not even twice as expensive as GDR6, like then you could finally get mid-range cards that use like 100 watts, and the cooling wouldn't be as much of an issue since it's a weaker card. Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to get there by RDNA 3, honestly. I think RDNA 3 is when AMD is going to finally start bringing out mid-range HBM cards. Although, again, what do you call mid-range? The Vega 56 was $400. I would argue that was the first mid-range HBM card, honestly. Okay, we got another tip here. Another few. What exactly is stopping SSD manufacturers from adding the same encoding decoding silicon found in the next-gen consoles? Well, I mean, so it's fixed function, though, in the next-gen consoles. They know exactly how it's going to be used, and so it makes sense. And then they'll make 100 million of them for the PS5, right? That's not the same with an M.2. What motherboard is this going into? Is it Intel? Is it AMD? I mean, are you putting an NVMe drive in a phone, in an ARM laptop? There's so many variables. That's what stops them from doing the same decoding tech. And I mean, I think it's coming, though, to be honest. I just think it's harder to do, and it's going to have to kind of be on like a and the other thing you got to think about too is it's like the consoles are able to put their components really close to each other for low latency. With a desktop, that's not as easy. But yeah, I mean, I think at least in Zen 4, we should hopefully see some type of dedicated encoding compressing thing on the silicon. And then that will interface with like it'll have like 2 set slots on the motherboard where it's like, this is the, rapid fast M.2 slot. I mean, I think it's coming, but it's not as easy to do when you have one set of hardware like a console. That's the benefits of the consoles, is they can take components that aren't that expensive and organize them in really, really efficient, smart ways that you just can't do when you've got so much variability in the do-it-yourself market. Lord Kitsuna asks, do you think people are too numbers focused? Yes, of course I do. I play 4K on my 5700 XT just fine on many games, even at higher frame rate. I mean, I know, me too. I play 4K 120 on my Radeon 7. I think people saying 4K is a waste of time haven't actually tried to play in 4K. Like, it's not that hard. Turn down a few settings that you can't notice the difference of. And even if you turn down the settings and play in 4K, it usually looks better because you can actually better appreciate the extra detail, like the particle effects in 4K. It's 4 times the pixels. You can see the little details better. So I agree. I think they benchmark an Ultra to do relative comparisons of graphics cards, and you see a 5700 XT doing 50 frames on Ultra and 4K in some games, and you go, oh, only 50 frames. It's like, dude, that's a $350 graphics card on the highest settings doing 50 frames in 4K. That means 4K isn't that hard. Turn down a few settings, you'll be doing it above 60. And yeah, so I mean, I agree. I absolutely agree. Any more? Tiago writes in, any more information about the PS5 boost in games? No. It's a 2.2 gigahertz graphics card. What is it? 3.4 gigahertz processor. That's correct. I really don't have much to add to that. If you're asking about the chances of Xbox and PlayStation upping the specs at the last minute, yeah, I mean, a couple people said they're considering it, but I find it unlikely because the console's been in production for a month. So I mean, let's put it that way. It'd be a very well kept secret if they were like, hey, we upped the specs a month ago. Hopefully that is true. I certainly hope that's true. And I've heard they considered it. So they at least considered it. But outside of upping GDR6 speeds, I find the increase in compute units thing, I don't know. Hopefully. It'd be really sick if the PS5 ended up having 38 compute units and like a 20% bandwidth boost. Then you know that thing would be capable of 4K 60 easily. And the same with the Xbox. I mean, although mostly with the Xbox, the rumor is that they're increasing the specs of the smaller console, so it doesn't hold it back. Which I certainly hope so, by the way. Let me see here. Eddie Del Castillo writes in, will there be a water-cooled high-end Navi card? I mean, I kind of assume so, but I'm not sure. You know, it depends, right? Are they actually going to double performance and use over 350 watts? Knowing AMD, I would have to assume they're going to use liquid cooling then. And if they don't, you know, I don't know. Yeah, I think so. I think most likely. Kevin Wise writes in, any thoughts on Intel and ordering chips from TSMC? Not really, man. I finally listened to some of the earnings call. You know, let me write this down as a timestamp, I guess, like Intel earnings call. I mean, I listened to the Intel earnings call finally today because I'm going to have to cover it in Broken Silicon, right? And it didn't sound good. And it's much worse than them going to TSMC for like 6 nanometer or something. The problem is they didn't seem to know. Like, and doubt is always worse than saying bad things. It's like, well, we're considering if we'll use TSMC. It's like, well, you design things years ahead of time. So if you're not sure if you're using TSMC now, how long until you have competitive products again? Right. And so I don't really have much to say. Right. And this is something I forgot to say in the beginning that I want to say now. I've been covering doom and gloom around Intel for a year. People think I hype up Intel right now. I just got tired of reporting the bad news. I try to report the good news now because I don't think anyone needs to tell you Intel's in trouble. Like, go look at the names of my videos from last year. Like, my first video to get over 50,000 views was literally why Intel isn't too big to fail and why dirty tricks won't work this time. And I think, honestly, that video has been very prescient. Like, it's pretty much all come true. Their dirty tricks that they used before aren't working, and nobody's too big to fail. And I think what we're seeing now is how bad things are getting. He says, so OJ says, I think you have some kind of sharpening in your camera. Thought for a long time you had the most low-key blue screen backdrop. Well, I use different cameras, guys. So for live streaming, I use a cheaper one, which, I mean, if I full screen myself, I think it looks fine right now. And then I use a much, much better with lower lighting. If you'll notice, this cheaper camera looks pretty decent during the day, but at night it gets all fuzzy. And then I have that higher end camera that can do 4K, 1440p, 60 hertz. It can do 1080p, 120 hertz, which I consider doing, by the way, 1080p 120 hertz for my videos, but YouTube doesn't support it yet. So it's like when you guys see 1080p 30 sometimes, it's just because I chose to save time and render at a lower resolution, and because I don't think it matters that much. But yeah, now I'm basically moving to 1440p 60, and I've been using the same camera since fall last year. Same cameras since fall last year. But no, it's not a blue screen. There's stuff back there. Watch. I'll throw a cloth. It's real. See? Anyways, what if you, JD Gamer writes in, What if you cooled HBM with Sony's method of top to bottom cooling, which I'm still not 100% sure that's what they're using, but it certainly looks like they're using something extravagant for the PS5, doesn't it? What would that allow HBM to be more practical? Yes, but it adds cost. Although I think AIBs are like massively marking up how much their fans cost, guys. Like, they're making a killing on, like, they're putting like a $5 cooling solution and marking it up $20. But yeah, I mean, yeah, like the top to bottom cooling would make an HBM device much, much, much more practical. Yeah. Pleb PC, any info or speculation on Sony reviving SOCOM? It's been rumored for a while, dudes, and I think it would make sense because Sony's really been neglecting online games. Well, not so. I think Sony's perspective is everyone's going to play Call of Duty Warzone and Battlefield anyway, so why bother making this big, online competitor? But I think they got to make SOCOM again. I just do. I think it just makes sense. I think we're lacking in tactical shooters right now, and that SOCOM is such a freaking obvious revival. But I don't have any proof it's coming. Although, again, one person told me so many exclusives are coming they haven't announced yet that you could almost guess at a game and it's coming. So I assume they'll bring it back at some point. Again, I think it would be dumb if they didn't. Rice Eater 79. Microsoft said that they used the most stable Halo build. Okay. But did it? Well, the Uncharted 2 build, I believe for the Uncharted 2 reveal many years ago at E3, Sony literally had 3 PS3s in the background, and they were trying to play the game at the same section. Yeah, I remember. It was that demo, if you'll remember, from Uncharted 2, where it shows Jake fighting through a collapsing building and a helicopter chasing him. It's a pretty big E3 moment. And they said that game had frozen 50% of the time when they played it. And so what they did is they put 3 PS3s behind the stage with different people playing it, trying to do the exact same stuff as the main guy on stage. And if it froze, they were going to instantly try to cut to a backup PlayStation, then instantly cut to another one. And they said one of the ones in the background did freeze, but the one on stage didn't, luckily. And that's the amount of effort you put into putting your best foot forward. So guys, I don't buy that excuse about the Halo demo. I don't buy it. Bullshit. And here's the problem. What they showed doesn't look like it looks almost like watch the Cherno, who is a game engine developer. He did his reaction video to the Halo demo, and he almost always says good things about the things he reacts to. And he's like, honestly, this looks like an early gen game being generously. It almost looks like a late last gen game just in 4K. And I agree. I just replayed Halo 1, 2, 3, and Reach. And I think the Halo 2 remaster looked just almost as good as what they showed. So I don't think there's an excuse, guys. I'm not being biased. I'm not being a fanboy. What they showed didn't look like a stable build. It looked like a last-gen game. So I'm sorry. So I don't buy that excuse. I honestly, here, I'll say this. I honestly wonder if there's something wrong with Halo's development. Right? Because otherwise I don't get what that was. Because it's almost like one of those things where it's like an Anthem thing where EA said, we know Anthem isn't ready, but, or like Mass Effect Andromeda is a better example, where EA said, it doesn't matter if it's not ready. You have a year to finish it. We're not giving you another 5 goddamn years. We've dumped millions into this company to make this game. Finish it. And that's why they showed it. I just hope that's not true. Because I really think, if they need to delay this game, they should. I know that's their big launch game, but they just got to do it. They just can't. They just got to. That's just my opinion, though. Jay Deward writes in, do you think we will see a Titan A, as in Titan Ampere, like a Titan V that brings A100? Yeah, I don't know. A100 seems really focused on data center. I think it's more likely they launch a refreshed like 7 nanometer EUV version of GA102. Personally, I think that's more likely than an A100. Or again, remember, supposedly Samsung has 7 nanometer EUV coming. Maybe Nvidia will just wait for that, even though God knows it won't be as good as TSMC's. But I think that's more likely than them bringing some professional A100. Although it'd certainly be interesting. Doesn't GA100 have like 1,000 tensor cores. And if people will remember, the Titan V actually did ray tracing a lot better than Pascal, because even though it didn't have ray tracing cores, it had tensor cores. And they actually found that the Titan V's ray tracing performance was like 80% as good as like a 2080 Ti, if I remember right. So you almost wonder if A100 having like double the tensor cores would make up for no RT cores to a certain extent. I don't know though. Probably not. I think it'd be fascinating if they actually brought that, and then we could just do like a raw tensor core ray tracing performance comparison. Think you missed a few super chats near mine. Let me scroll up. You guys got to understand that the way YouTube does this just jumps around. Like I try to scroll. No. I answered that one. Or answered that one. It's not popping up, man. I think I answered them. If not, yeah. Let me see here. All right, so let me see what's happening in the Discord. 1080p 120 hertz would be the best. From Linus Red Tips. This guy's name on the Discord used to be Linus's Sex Tips. So you changed your name. I mean, I don't know. People say I move my arms around so much that I should do it in 120 hertz. Let me see here. I am sick of all FPS games being the same currently. This is also reminding me why I'm still waiting for another Splinter Cell. They've got to be working on a new Splinter Cell. I've heard so many people begging for Splinter Cell on podcasts recently. See people talking about crude oil reserves in some name for some reason in the Discord. Interesting. Make a new channel. Fossil fuels are dead. Let's see. Rice Eater 79 writes in and says, how important is HDMI 2.1 for next gen gaming? I mean, what resolution do you want to play at? DisplayPort 2.0 or HDMI 2.1 will be necessary to game at the resolutions. And, you know, like even for my 4K 120 hertz monitor, it's clear that DisplayPort 1.4 holds it back a little bit. My TV's all DisplayPort 2.1. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's important. I think the next gen graphics cards should have 2.0, DisplayPort 2.0 and HDMI 2.1. And that it would be ridiculous if they didn't. Although if you'll remember in one of my recent Ampere leaks, it sounds like Ampere will have the latest DisplayPort in HDMI. So that's good. I'm only a little worried that AMD will have a outdated DisplayPort, because anyone remember the Fury X and how that only had like DisplayPort 1.2 and last gen HDMI, so you couldn't even do 4K 60 with the Fury X over HDMI, even though that was like its main selling point. Like AMD screwed up the output ports before, so I just hope they don't this time. I think it's important though. Like I'm not getting a graphics card that doesn't have HDMI 2.1. I'll just wait for RDNA 3 then or something. Let me put it that way. Big Stout says, good work. I think you're unbiased. Well, I try to be. Let me see here. You could probably wait like 2 years for at least PS5. I'm not sure what that guy's talking about. Do you think Malari Azka writes in, do you think, let me put a timestamp down for this one. Scrolling too fast. Do you think micro LED and quantum dot, they're not the same. Quantum dot is grossly inferior to OLED, micro LED, not the same thing. So I'm just going to ignore the micro dot part of or the quantum dot part of your question. Do you think micro LED panels smaller than 49 inches will be ready for release next year? No, not micro LED. I think OLED will be. OLED is already to 48 inches and it's the same quality, guys. Again, like this is, guys, the benefits of micro LED are that you can make OLED quality bigger without burn-in, but burn-in's already almost not a factor. So And the problem with OLED is it's like the way they make their screens, they have a problem making the OLED panels smaller than 48 inches, but then they also have a problem making panels bigger than like 15 inches. So it's that middle in between that the monitor market wants that's being held up. And so I think it's just a race to see who can get OLED panels there first. And I think LG's trying to get to like at least a 32 incher. And I think they will next year, like, or at least early 2022. Otherwise, when it comes to micro LED, I think it's going to be years before we see small micro LED monitors. And I think once you get those, I think I think that will be the technology to use for a while, but it's going to be a while. And until then, OLED is the best quality. What I'm really excited for is mini LED, because mini LED could be like a quantum dot panel that's not as good as OLED or micro LED, but then you get like 1,000, or I've even heard 10,000 dimming zones. I think 300 dimming zones is almost a waste of time. It just adds latency. That's my opinion. Don't have to agree, but that's what I think. However, 10,000 dimming zones, all right, well, that's not as good as the 8 million OLED has, but it's getting there. You're getting there at 10,000, right? At that point, it'll start looking pretty damn good, I think. And so what would excite me is if when we have these $1,000 OLED monitors, there's a $500 4K 120 hertz mini LED alternative that looks like 80% is good or 75% is good. If you can get 75% the performance for half the price, that's what I'm looking forward to. All right, so let me write that down as a timestamp. Feel like every live stream, it's something that I have. Oh, and every mailbag episode of Die Shrink, which only patrons get, I always end up going on a micro LED rant. It's just like, it's like I can't do a live stream without a rant about it, it seems. How do you think the old ray tracing games will support AMD's ray tracing? Again, my understanding is AMD's ray tracing is done in a different manner from a hardware perspective, but that it still kind of uses a similar method from a driver level. So I think old games will just work with the new AMD ray tracing. Daniel, man, I wish this would not just scroll all over the place. I'm trying to read your questions. Daniel Bird says, where or when do you think ARM will start to manufacture mainstream desktop CPUs? Well, aren't they technically already? I'm pretty sure you can already get ARM motherboards. I don't know, man. It's hard to say. Like, let's assume Nvidia buys ARM this year and then starts working on their AMD Intel competitors. I don't think it's going to be as good, but 3 years maybe. I don't know. But a lot of things would have to go right. So don't quote me. I'm not sure about that. And I don't think ARM needs to make the same stuff as Intel and AMD to cause them trouble. They don't need to literally make socketed, like LGA like CPUs that you buy to compete directly with AMD and Intel. They'll keep prices down just by making their own BGA CPUs that go into laptops, right? It's going to force prices down either way because it's all connected. JK Teddy 77 says the burning question: Ampere and RDNA 2 initial flagships, or wait until Ampere on 7 nanometer EUV? I've been already thinking about Hopper in 2021. That's what I'm thinking about too. I mean, again, do you need it now? Are you going to get a console and just end up playing exclusives for a while? Are you going to, what graphics card do you have now? Do you already have a 5700 XT? It's probably good enough if you game at 60 hertz. I don't know. It's up to you to wait, and it's going to be up to prices. If the 6950X, which I'm assuming you're willing to pay a lot of money then, right, is like $1,000 and doubles 5700 XT performance, I don't know, man. If you want to treat yourself, you just get it, but it's up to you. I can't answer that question. I'm not sure. Okay, so Raiders fan 42 writes in, I'm not sure if you already talked about this, but how much of a problem will it be? I guess let me write down a timestamp on that one. 136 XSX Memory Segments. I'm not sure if you already talked about this, but how much of a problem will it be that Xbox Series X is a split memory configuration? And again, what you've got to remember, the Xbox Series X APU is going to be used to stream xCloud instances 4 at once. So why would they do that? So they can have 2 segments of memory and double or triple or quadruple the 6 gigabyte segment to like 24 gigabytes to handle 4 different instances because it's a server APU. And then they went with just 6 gigabytes on the console. When I'm pretty sure the early dev kits had 12 gigabytes, guys. Like, I think their initial plan was 12 gigabytes for that memory segment. How big of a problem is it? We're just not going to know for sure until, honestly, 2 years from now, because current gen consoles reserve like 3 gigabytes for the OS or more. And so, like, really, they're only using 5 gigabytes right now. So I don't think it's going to be a problem in this fall's games, like almost at all. And I could see it not being a big problem early next year. But you're going to have to do something moving that memory around. And I think it could be a pretty big problem for open world games in a few years, which, from what I've heard, the PS5 doesn't need to use as much of the OS, as much of the RAM for the OS, because the SSD can almost just run the OS directly off of it. Because it's, again, look at the bandwidth of the PS5's SSD. It's above DDR2. So they can probably just run parts of the OS without even touching the RAM. And the fact that Xbox has to put apparently like 3.5 gigabytes in the RAM and then it's segmented, I'm sorry, that's going to be a problem in a year. I know they have a way of shuffling memory around with their co-processors, but it's still, I don't know. It's just impossible to quantify. It's just going to affect open world games for sure. How many people they can, it's going to affect view distances, how many AI enemies there can be in a game. It's going to have to. Like, that's just how hardware works. I'm just telling the truth. All right, let me see. But if it's going to be a major problem, we won't know for at least 2 years. Maxima Extreme says, which TV would work best with the PS5? Anything with an HDMI. I mean, I don't. I recommend a 4K HDR TV. Like, I recommend LG's OLED TVs in general for just about everything. And it's not even just how good the picture quality is. Like the wand remote that you can kind of use like a Wiimote, it's so easy to use. It's like the best remote I've used ever, frankly. And you don't even always need to point it at it, right? It has like a transmitter inside of it so that if I turn it on, right, let me make sure. Like, it should just turn on. Like, it's very easy. You don't need to directly, like, I have no problem turning this TV on across the room and like moving this around. So I couldn't recommend LG's TVs enough, you know. And that's really all I got to say about that. But I'm aware there are now cheaper Sharp TVs that are OLED, I believe. And I think, I don't know if it was Panasonic or I forgot what the other TV was. I know there's another one besides. Oh, there's Vizio as well. And then there's another one too. Carbon Cry says, what is the question you want us to ask the most right now? I don't know. I would say in reader mails, you guys can be more open to asking me and Dan goofy questions, like what's our favorite food? What do we think about this movie? You can ask us more gaming questions in the reader mail for the podcast. That's one thing I would say. Questions to ask me right now. I'm here for you guys. I'm here doing a live stream. And as you can tell, my voice is dying because I've been talking for almost 2 hours straight. I'm here to answer your questions. You know, you can, it's not as, what I say here is not as focused and well-researched as what I say in a video. So I would ask people to quote me here, but you're hearing my honest to God opinions at the very least. So, you know, do with that information what you will. And that's just to show that, like, if there's anything you guys are wondering about all these videos that I have come out every month, I'm here to answer and clarify things. Victor Hugo, taking a break from writing music, says, right, that he was writing music. Hopefully I just didn't come off as a dumbass. Says, dimming zones still add latency. They do, regardless of quantity. Yep, but I've heard mini LED should have lower latency, though, through what it's doing. I honestly don't remember. Says, I don't think it is well suited to gamers. Look, man, if you can keep it close to 1 millisecond latency, I think I'll live, or even 2 millisecond, right? Honestly, I think anything above 4 milliseconds, I can kind of notice a little bit, but anything below 4 milliseconds, I can live with. And again, let's be honest here. Like I'm saying mini LED will not be as good as OLED. It will have higher latency. It will have, you know, dimming zones instead of per pixel black levels, you know, perfect blacks. But if you could make a mini LED TV at any screen size without burning for half the price of OLED, I think that's a compelling product. That's all I'm saying, Victor. Edgar Vasquez writes in, hey man, I love your work. When I see a Moore's Law's video, I click, as all of you should. He says, do I wait for RDNA 3 or get a 3080 Ti 3090? Currently have a 2080 Ti. Man, it's just, I mean, it depends how much that money means to you and how much you use the 2080 Ti for encoding and not gaming work. How many times am I going to answer this? It's up to you, but you're going to be able to get a 3080 for the price of a 2080 Ti sold used, I think, easily, if not more than a 3080. And should you wait for RDNA 3? RDNA 3, I think, will be 50% better than RDNA 2. So do with that info what you will. And I'm waiting for it because I'm happy with my Radeon 7. And I game on console like a third of the time anyways. So I game on console almost half the time now just because I'm tired of having to deal with PC drivers and stuff, Windows updates. I just want to turn it on and play a game sometimes. Just beat Titanfall 2, by the way. Man, I know I'm late to the Titanfall 2 party, but that Titanfall 2 is like a stone cold classic in my opinion. Though that single player was so good. What an underrated game. Titanfall 2 is I was like, wow, I can't believe I didn't play this earlier. Man. Anyways, Manuel Alvarez writes in, since AMD, Intel, Nvidia, and others are so invested in x86 and Windows, should they be colluding and creating a standard experience to wall people off? Considering they might have Apple support now. No, I don't think they should, but I really think people need to start looking at why we are still chained to x86. Right? That's just the way I would put it. Like, why are we chained to x86? It's not about x86 being obsolete either. I think great architectures on x86 are coming that will probably blow ARM away. But at the same time, it's like, I just wish there was more competition than Intel and AMD. And again, if you listen to Intel's earnings call, I don't know how much competing they're going to be doing for the next year, guys. So I just wish there was, I wish Apple would and Nvidia would make like 8, 12, 24 core CPUs and sell them on desktop. I think there'd be more competition if that was the case. I don't think they should try to wall off x86 though. Sri Jagannath. Okay. Sri Jagannathan. I think I said that right. Says Xbox velocity architecture. Oh man, I die inside every time someone uses the buzzword velocity, the buzz phrasing. Hardware accelerated decompression. Yes, which the PS5 has, which some things on PC already have. It's not magic, guys. And new direct storage API. Do we need these for PC? It'd be more efficient if we had these for PC. I think that's what it's going to come down to. Like, look at Zen 3. We're going to get like 20% higher IPC, 16 core CPUs. Even the mid-range will be 20% higher IPC, 20% higher clock speeds than the consoles. So what, 40, 50% better than the consoles just in an 8 core for $350 or something? Like, so you have to wonder if they need the co-processors when they can just brute force with Zen 3 and 4. I think they're going to have to add co-processors and accelerated decompression eventually, though, because someone's going to do it and it's going to give them a huge advantage. That's my honest opinion. But until then, I don't know, man. Brute force works for PC half the time. It's just not as efficient. Sinister Exis Gaming says you need to hydrate, bro. Thank you. I do. My voice is clearly wearing out. Crispy, any thoughts on that DLSS style tech patent for PS5? Do you think both Xbox and PS5 could take advantage? It's so funny how often I see the same questions asked over and over, but I'm assuming people are joining the live stream and didn't know as already asked. Again, I'm sure the next gen consoles will have some type of specialized upscaling in DLSS tech, and I'm sure that AMD will have an answer for desktop because it would be suicide to not have something to compete with DLSS. Suicide. So that's my answer. I don't have any thoughts. I don't think you can read too much into these patents, though, because you never know what they're doing it for. Some of this stuff could be for like camera tracking, right? Or something. Like Sony's a big company. Same thing with any Microsoft patent. You can't be so sure it's not for Surface or something besides Xbox. I wouldn't read too much into them. Cyberwolf755, what's your hope for 3D stacking and CPUs and GPUs and multi-GPU setups? My hope is that it'll be used. I mean, I guess let me put down a timestamp for this 3D stacking. I mean, when it comes to 3D stacking, there's a lot of evidence RDNA 3 is going to use this. I have been told by someone that I could not trust more that Zen 4 will have 3D stacking, and that's been rumored for a while, so it's not a big bombshell for me to say that. Zen 4 is going to have 3D stacking. RDNA 3 is probably going to do some form of 3D stacking. There's even, well, I won't say. Let's just say that, like I've said, I've been sitting on more console information that's more insane, and that I just need to wait for it to be confirmed because I don't want to like get it wrong. But like some of the consoles could have it. I mean, I believe the Vita technically stacked some memory on its ARM SoC. You guys can look that up, but that's true. They stacked some memory. So it's been used before, it's being used now, and it's going to be used a lot more in the future. I just think it's going to be much more tiered, and like the rollout's going to be like, don't expect everything to be 3D stacked at once. Like, look at the problems Lakefield has, and like they're making it work, but like it's going to be like, oh, we're going to 3D stack this component now until we get it working. Then we're going to 3D stack this component now until we get it working. And I think you're going to see it more and more and more over the next 2 years. But I do think it's going to be a big part of late next year's architectures. I guess let's put it that way, huh? Rice Eater, hear of Vizio's HDMI 2.1p Quantum Pro Game Engine TV? Nope, I haven't. But I'm again, it's no comment. I know there's other TVs out there. I know, but I just know that I just couldn't recommend LG's enough. I'm not saying there aren't other options. I just don't know everything. Carmen Cry says you'd ask for gaming questions. So when will you and Dan do a Ghost Recon Breakpoint joke stream? Yeah, that was quite a letdown. I mean, we really liked Ghost Recon Wildlands, even though it got kind of mediocre reviews. Like, and yeah, Ghost Recon Wildlands wasn't a perfect game by any means, and some of its acting and writing was hilarious. I mean, I think, yeah, in a die shrink, me and Dan literally did a die shrink where we just read quotes from some of the dialogue in Ghost Recon Wildlands and laughed because we couldn't believe how bad the writing was. Like, I don't want to repeat it because I'll probably get demonetized. It was hilarious. You guys gotta listen to some of the quotes that come from Ghost Recon Wildlands. It's hilarious. But yeah, so I thought Breakpoint would at least be fun, but it looks like it. I like the premise of Breakpoint, and I remember playing the beta for Breakpoint, and then it just kept crashing, and I was like, well, those graphics are good, but it doesn't work. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have much to say about Breakpoint except I'll try it when it's $3 like the Division 2 was, which I think the Division 2 was great. So as much as, Breakpoint didn't pan out, the Division 2 was way better than I expected. Oh, we got another question. In the next generation of consoles after PS5, Xbox, what technologies, core counts, 3D stacking, co-processors would you build into them? I mean, guys, think about what we're getting with these consoles. Imagine if you asked me this in 2013. What do you think the PS5 should have? I'd be like, SSDs probably, because maybe they'll be cheap by then. More RAM? I wouldn't have even mentioned ray tracing. I don't know. I assume the PS5 will have like RDNA if they make PS6. I mean, well, if they make one, again, they say it could be the last console gen. If there's a PS6, I assume, heavy 3D stacking, RDNA 4, and who knows? It could have HBM 3 or 4. Like, who knows what it will be? It's hard for me to say. I really don't know. I would honestly expect it to have an absurd amount of ultra fast memory and basically be capable of full photorealism with instant everything. Like, by then you'd think we'd have latency so low that they could do that. I don't know. I can only speculate. The PS6. It's, again, imagine if you asked me in 2013, and remember what was out in 2013. We were talking about Kepler in the 7970. If you asked me during the 7970 days what I expect from the PS5, who knows? I mean, I would just be like, more RAM? All right, let me see here. Am I planning on playing Ghost of Tsushima? Probably. But I'm going to beat Last of Us Part 2 again. I just beat Titanfall 2. And I have Metro Exodus. I'm going to go through Metro Exodus. I still have the Last Guardian from 2 years ago that I haven't beat. I want to go through... I haven't played Days Gone yet. What else is on PC? There's other PC games, too, that I'm forgetting. I mean, by then, Cyberpunk will be out. So I don't know. There's the list of games to play. I can't get over people saying there aren't any good games. I'm like, then you're just not looking for them. Okay, let's see what we got here in the chat. 5 minutes left, guys. Remember, the cutoff is 2 hours. So I'm getting tired, so I'm going to get a beer quick, and we're gonna close this out. Two Brothers Prairie Path, one of my favorites. All right, this is the painfully honest part of the podcast where my inhibitions are a little lowered and I'll just be extra honest. But yeah, 5 more minutes because, again, if I don't close this out in like 5 minutes, like YouTube's uploading and like if it goes over 2 hours, YouTube freaks out for a few hours before I can like it's hard to watch it for hours if I don't stop before then. And frankly, you guys don't need me talking for more than 2 hours. Zach Miklos writes in, what's my favorite beer? Final Absolution from Warren, Michigan. Final Absolution. When I used to work for General Motors, that was my favorite beer. Anytime I go through Detroit, I have to stop by that bar because they don't sell it anywhere else really. And I have to pick it up. After that, I would say, what's it? A Blonde Fatale. It's an Iowa beer, Blonde Fatale. And then after that, I mean, I really, really like Mud Puppy Porter by Clearwater's Brewing in Illinois. I like Mississippi Blonde from Illinois. I really like Two Brothers Prairie Path. That's what I'm having now. I don't know, guys. What else is there? What else? Oh, and Allagash White. Allagash White from Portland, Maine. Love Allagash White. Can't get Allagash here. It's like a better Blue Moon. Like Allagash White is so good. In terms of like regular beers, I really like Pacifico Clara from Mexico, and I don't know, almost any Belgian, honestly. Blue Moon's pretty good, actually. Which next gen cross gen games are you most looking forward to? The exclusive I can't tell you. That, honestly, that's the one I'm most looking forward to. Besides that, I mean, another God of War is going to probably be great, and Resident Evil 8. I mean, I thought Resident Evil 7 was the best horror game ever made besides PT. So outside of like a Silent Hills revival, Resident Evil 8. Oh my God, I'm excited for Resident Evil 8. I can't gush over that enough. And Stalker 2. I love the first Stalker. Stalker 2. Excited for Stalker 2. I don't know. What else is there? And I'd probably flip out if they actually made another SOCOM, because that's my first big online game. Outlast sucks compared to PT, guys. I'm seeing comments here. I mean, Outlast was scary for like 5 minutes. And then it was like, yep, I'm running from some guy in a blank prison. Like, those games really don't scare me. Like, honestly, like Death Stranding's scarier. Like, because eventually in horror games, it just turns into hiding under a bed. And it's not scary anymore when you realize the AI is so easy to cheese. Right? Like, all those horror games become so unscary when you can cheese the AI. I love seeing people guess at the exclusive game. Oh, that's the alarm. What do we got? I'll give it 2 more minutes. Sorry, I'm just laughing at a couple comments in the Discord. Yeah, I've never played Alien Isolation. I should try it. I've heard that one's good too. I bet it is good. Any info on a 75-watt Ampere card? I mean, like, let's be honest, you know, a 75-watt Ampere card. So, right, if a GTX 1650 is almost, and if you use the GDR6 version of a 1650, like what's called on laptop the 1650 Ti. It's basically an RX 570 that uses 75 watts. So on 8 nanometer, I don't know. If it was on 7 nanometer, I could see them making something like as strong as almost a 2070, 75 watts. But no, I don't think so anymore. I think like a 75 watt Ampere card is going to be something close to, yeah, I mean, it could be a 2060 though. Could be. We'll see, right? I mean, do the math on how good Ampere is going to be. I could, if they can get to a 570, probably not a 26. It's probably, yeah, I don't know. Probably just below like a 5600 XT is what they can get a 75 watt Ampere card to, if I had to guess. Genre of exclusive. I'm not telling you that, Rice Eater. Guys, I'm not telling you that. No. And it can only be like 20 games. So if I told you the genre, you would know the game is. Like, come on. Someone says Resistance is the game Sony's bringing back. I mean, I think no matter what, we're going to get a Resistance remaster, don't you? No, that's not me saying it's Resistance. Any predictions on Xbox Series X loading times? Yeah, this is the easiest prediction ever. You guys ready for this? The SSD can do 4.8 gigabytes per second. It's a 16 gigabyte console. 3 to 4 seconds. Done. That's how long it's going to take to load, you guys. Like, I don't like, it's just people who are like, oh, the Xbox will have instant loading like the PS5. No, it physically can't have instant loading because its bandwidth isn't enough to fill the RAM fast enough. The PS5 has peak bandwidth of 22 gigabytes per second. That's why it can load the RAM in under a second. Even the normal compressed one is 9 gigabytes. So that's under 2 seconds. No, yeah, there's your prediction. 5-second load times for games that take full advantage of it. 5 to 10 second, though. See, that's the thing, though. You almost wonder if they're hyping up their co-processor too much because the demonstrations I've seen look like it takes 10 seconds. So I'm going to say 5 to 10 seconds. And it can't be more, and it literally couldn't be quicker than 3 seconds, guys. It can't be. You physically can't move more data than the gigabytes per second, so you can't fill the 16 gigabytes of RAM. Like, this isn't debatable. It can't be faster than that. Physically, it can't be. All right, guys, that's it. We're at 1 hour and 59 minutes. As we know, YouTube screws around for a few seconds before I cancel the screen, so that's going to be it. That's it, guys. I'm ending the live stream. Thank you all for joining. Look for a new Z video soon that probably won't be that positive. Look for the new Broken Silicon with me and Dan. Remember to subscribe to Broken Silicon on podcast apps. We are charting in the top 100 of Apple technology. If we got everyone who listens to it on YouTube to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, we would go to the top 10 and get noticed. So subscribe to Broken Silicon. Support us on Patreon. Peace.